Hello all, welcome to this new workbench video following the construction and build of the Captain Baxter kit, which I produce for my own small shop, Vectis 3D models. This kit of course is a Captain Baxter kit in 00 4mm and is designed to be fitted onto a L&Y pug produced by Hornby or Dapol. Which can be picked up relatively cheaply these days. This kit has been on sale on Shapeways for a good many years, sold about 10-15, but has always been lacking extra bits and pieces and detail. Now I've figured out the CAD systems and all that kind of thing, it's been rebuilt from the ground up with brand new bits, buffers, steps, springs and also cylinders. I'll talk you through the parts that you have in the kit, but also you'll need a great deal of other small bits and pieces, wire, copper and various detailing items as well. In this kit you will get one body shell, a pair of cylinders with rear covers depending which slide bars and cylinder rods you go for, one smoke box door, a set of steps, 2 front and 2 rear, 4 buffers, 2 front and 2 rear, 2 springs, 2 tank filler caps, 1 cab back plate, and lastly 2 NEM pockets for the L&Y pug chassis. These may change slightly when released. So the second part of this, or the first part depending which order I put it in, so we'll go on to the body shell of the Baxter kit. So this is the raw body shell, as you will get it. It's in grey. It's had most if not all of the supports removed, just double check around, there might be one in the smoke box. There are going to be several down the boiler barrel, but we can't get to those, so it doesn't really matter because they're going to be filled anyway in the not too distant future. And also it's printed in grey resin, which is quite a nice engineering base colour. But of course with supports and removal you'll get pits of where it's pulled out, ripped out, and also you'll get little leftover rough edges, especially on the underside. So this is positioned like that in the printer and it's printed upwards or downwards, one of the two. So most of the supports are on the underside. Now we'll start on the underside. You will have 3 installed brass knurled inserts basically, and they're threaded to M2 size screws. So I have one just here. There you go. You might need to cut down the screw. There you go, that fits in there quite nicely, and that goes all the way into the boiler barrel, so you've got quite a lot of thread to put in there if you want to. So they're all installed. You might want to put a bit of glue around the outside just to let it seep down and hold in position a bit better. So they're all installed. They should come pre-installed. If I've missed them, please tell me, and I'll either have it back, put them in for you, or tell you what to drill it out to and then put them in. But you can see on the underside we have quite a lot of support debris, as I call it, or the pitting, but they also rise and fall, which you can see on the side here. If you look along the edge, you've got quite a lot of rising and shallow troughs, etc. So you will need a needle file. I've started on this bit just here, so you just need to keep it flat and go across, cleaning it up as you go, and you should get a nice clean edge when you're finished. So you've got a bit of work to do on that, and again, just whether there's any connection points where you might have where bits stick to, like the roof, just need to clean it up like so. It's not too difficult and not hard to do at all. So that's quite simple. The top side you don't really need to do anything with, apart from add things to it, of course. So clean it. If there's anything has warped or moved, put it into some hot water for a few minutes and just try and bend it back gently. Don't try and force it, because this will break and you don't want that. But it's mainly this area here where it will need bending back, all the tops of the cab. So once you've cleaned all that up, put a bit of glue around the nuts, then we can move on to the next section. So going on to the Baxter body shell, obviously we've done some work on this already. So we've actually smoothed the undersides and removed any support material where it caused that sort of wavy effect. So that's all nice and filed down with a needle file. Obviously your threaded inserts for M2 screws are already present. Just add a little bit of glue around them and hopefully they won't pop out. Right now we're going to go on to the holes and diameters if you need to drill them out. Anything 3D printed will shrink. It's just the way it works, unfortunately. So you're looking at about a 5% shrinkage rate depending on what you've printed. So you'll need a drill. Now I got a little pin vise drill here. I've got various thicknesses of drills from a small kit of drills, going all the way from 0.2 to 1 point something or other, 1.2 I think it is mil. So what we need to do really is go around and check. So from building one already, the holes for the cab supports, which are these two on the outer side here, these probably won't need doing, but if you do, there's 0.8 there and there. Now the other small holes, if you can just about see that in the light, if I bring it forward a little bit. Now the other small holes around here is for pipe work. There's a lot of pipe work in front of the cab, windows, etc. This is 0.6 for holes here and here, all the way along, and that one there. There's 0.6, and that will take some 0.6 copper wire, which will need to be shaped and soldered. Done that on the prototype already and on various Baxters. You can buy the copper wire from various sources. Here's some here. It's only cost me a few quid. It's usually found in the jewellery kind of sector, for jewellery making. So that's quite useful for detailing any locomotives really, so I always keep a load with me. So you'll need 0.8 brass rod wire there, 0.6 copper. These holes are fine, they don't need to be drilled out. Those are for the tank filler caps. The other ones which may need drilling out are the ones on the front here for the handrail knobs, basically the handrail holders. So they'll need doing, slightly opening out slightly. They are wider on this prototype than the first one I made, so you might be okay. And you need either a staple or a piece of thin bronze or brass strip. You can make a little lamp iron there as well, or you can use etchers, which used to be from mainly trains, who are now under Wizard. Also you'll notice on the front you've got a little recess here at the front. You can buy some MT355, which is diamond checker plate. I tried to 3D print it, it didn't work. Here's some here, and that will just sit in the recess and look quite smart. The other hole that you'll need to drill, you at one side, is the one in the centre of the smoke box, and that's for the smoke box door dart. So you will probably need to drill that out, depending on which door dart you buy. They vary in diameter of sort of fixed point, so you'll need to measure it and check, but I think mine was about 1 mm. So drill a mill hole, stick it in with a bit of super glue, or solder where you want the door handles first, then glue it in place, and then that's okay to paint. All the other holes, the buffers are fine, the actual hook for the coupling hook, that's fine. On the rear, the other small holes which will need doing are the handrail holes, so there's 2 there and 2 there. They'll need opening up to 0.45 because they're so small the printer fills them in. There's also 2 there, 2 there, sorry, and 2 there for grab handles above the buffers, so they'll need doing as well. The other small recesses, that one here, is for the springs. I've made them removable so you can paint behind them a bit easier instead of being all in one piece. Apart from that, it's all mainly down to shaping, cutting, and a bit of soldering and a bit of glue as well. Obviously you'll need to, as you go, work out which ones you can put in as and when. So here we go. So having gone through what holes to drill and at what size, it's best to start putting some things on. So you can already see I've put the diamond checker sort of etch pattern on here. It's just been glued on with super glue, as it's not really a part that needs any other type of glue. The handrail for the smoke box and handrail knobs, the holes did need to be enlarged slightly, only very slightly, so they've been done, and also the handrail bent, shaped and soldered. I've also added the lamp iron on the top. This is just from an etch from an old mainly trains etch which is sold by Wizard. Now all of these parts are available from Eileen's. The checkered plate I believe is from Wizard from memory. Now for the rest of it, obviously I said we've got to drill some more holes for more handrails and grab handles, etc. So I've drilled the 2 here, I'll drill 1 here, so all you need is your pin vise with a 0.45mm drill bit. Again, the drill bit's from Eileen's Emporium, and this is just from Amazon I think, from what I can remember. So just simple, there's a small located dent where the hole should be. You can just about see it there, so that locates quite nicely. And just lightly drill. These are sharp enough, they'll go quite deep very quickly if you're not paying attention. There we go. So that's been drilled, ready for handrail. And on the rear, 4 holes, 2 that side, 2 that side, 2 that side as well, 1 up, 1 down. So that will be ready to accept handrail wire. Here is some handrail wire. So 0.45. Just needs to be bent with either some pliers, or you can have some sort of shaping pliers as well if you've got various sort of bends, etc. That you need to do. You can also get a handrail jig as well. I think it's a Bill Bedford jig from Eileen's Emporium, which does help if you're doing repetitive grab handles and that kind of thing. It's a jig to just keep doing what you're doing really and have the same results after every single time. These can just be glued in with super glue, nothing major, so they'll be quite fine to do that. And move on to the next section. Okay, next up, now that we've got the handrails installed and glued in, etc., the next part is the smoke box door. So this is another part that does need a bit of a drilling. So you need a 0.95 to a 1mm drill bit. You need a smoke box door dart, which I have here from Eileen's Emporium again. I always sort of order from there because they do most of the bits I need, so most of the bits will come from there. This is a 4mm dart. You can see there with the code number on it if you require it. So it's a 3-part dart turned in brass with 2 handles and the dart itself. Smoke box door, you have a small dimple in the middle for where the hole needs to go. So one drill, put it in the centre, it will locate quite easily, and you drill your hole if it's tight enough. Okay, having drilled the hole in the centre, up to 1mm I think it is, or just over. So we've got the door dart itself, and we have the 2 handles. Now, depending how you want to assemble this, you can glue it, solder it. If you're going to glue it, you can glue the centre pin in the middle, then arrange basically your clock face, or where you want the handles positioned. Either you want a copy of photo or whatever, but I will go ahead and fit this and solder it all together. So on to the next part of the Baxter body shell build. You can see in front of us here we've got mainly the parts for the buffer beam. So some of you will also know that Baxter now has, I think it's either steam heat or vacuum, one of the two. I think it's possibly steam heat. So they've added a pipe to the buffer beam recently in its life. So you can add that if you wish. I'm sure there's various other suppliers of buffer beam detail out there. But onto the kit itself, so you'll need the 4 buffers, so 2 for each end, of course. Now they're offset. Now what I mean by offset is if you turn one of them round, right way up, there you go. So we've got a little pin on the end, and the pin lower to the bottom part of the buffer is way up it goes. That is just to lift it up slightly. So the buffer head is a bit higher up by about 1mm or so. So they'll need to go in that way up, the pin lower to the bottom. It's not by much, so it's a bit difficult to see, so just try it out and check it. You'll also need a coupling hook. Now you can see this one hasn't got one on there at the moment. Now what I'm using is an etched brass one, which is just a coupling hook from what used to be mainly trains, but now done by Wizard models. And these come in an etch of 20, you can see here, and the code number at the top. You can put springs behind them and use them for wagons and all sorts, so they're quite handy to have around for a bit of detail. And you can just pick one up and stick it in. There's no filing at all. Here you go, just a bit of glue on there to hold it in place, and it's good to go. The buffers, as I say, they're offset, so if we just put one in there just to show. I've got a bit of blue tack on the back of these so they don't fall off, but you'll get the gist. So there you go, that's the buffers on as well. Now of course there's some steps as well to go on, which is just behind the buffer beam as we work our way back. So that's the buffer beam detail. So 4 buffers. You need to get yourself some coupling hooks. If you've got some or know of some other ones you can use, please feel free. Let's move on to just behind the buffer beam. Okay, moving on down the locomotive now, but we're still sort of remaining under the running plate. So next part is really steps. Now at the end of the day, again depending on how you want to build this, I may stick these on before painting or after painting. I'll probably do it just before, because some of these resin parts do need some fettling to get them into the right place and sort of fit correctly. So on this locomotive there are 2 front steps and 2 rear steps, and both are mounted in or around the buffer beam. So the 2 steps here are the front, so one here and one on the other side. Now I've already stuck these on because at the end of the day I've already recorded this and the file has disappeared. no idea where it is. The other two, we have sort of some pegs on the right hand side and the left hand side. Now if I rotate this round and lift it up slightly, you can see here this leg, which bends up to the right, fits, so it's on the edge of the buffer beam here, dropping down, and the same for the other side. So they just stick on. You can just use super glue, that's fine. They will hold quite okay, and there's plenty of surface area to keep them attached. While I'm in this area and under the running plate, if you've watched the chassis build or modifications that you need to do, you would have noticed on this one I'm using the 009 RT model slide bar. Now I did try to mount these onto the original motion bracket which comes with the pug, but because there's a slight angle on it, it doesn't really work. So in your kit you will now get, hopefully, a 3D printed motion bracket which you can fit the 009 slide bars onto. They'll need some glue. If I rotate it around this way, you can see it sort of fits into the back and is nice and flush, and you can glue that in with a bit of super glue or araldite. So that's another small modification as I'm building it and going along and finding new things. So you'll get that in the kits along with the 4 steps. There will be spares available if you break one or if you lose a step, so no problems, and they're reasonably easy to produce. So I'll move on to the next bit, which is the springs and the top of the tanks. So on to the springs of the Baxter model. Now originally when I made this from Shapeways and also on various prototypes 1 and 2, the springs were a part of the running plate, so they were a bit of a pain. And when I built mine and my original one, I already built the thing and then painted it afterwards, which I found was a royal pain to work around, as I keep mentioning. The main reason is because I couldn't paint behind the spring, so this area here where the spring sits, I couldn't get to the boiler barrel, I couldn't get to the boiler band to put the lining on, and it was an absolute nightmare. So for version 3 or 3.5, whatever version of Baxter this is, I've taken the springs off and printed them as a simple part on their own. And here you have the 2 of them here, so there's one on each side, and you can see they're in their own part, and also you can just paint them on their own, which is a little bit easier. You can do the front and the back. On the running plate, I've recessed a rectangle area just here, you can see, on both sides, and this is where the spring sits, and a little bit of dabber glue in there to fit them, so you can fit them after painting, and it just makes the whole model build a bit easier and a little bit more friendly as well. So on these springs, if my camera will focus on my hand, they're a bit rough on the underside, so you'll need a needle file. There you are. You'll just need to file the back, just get rid of all the support debris and material. And of course on these springs there's always a right way and a wrong way. You can see the front here has the band around the centre of the spring and the supports and the hangers, etc. This is the base and you can see on the reverse it's just completely flat and plain, no detail, and that's the way which is facing the boiler. So you won't see that side, but paint it black or red or whatever colour they are these days. I think they're red at the moment on Baxter, which is in the shed at Sheffield Park. Now to fit them, just use some super glue, or you can use some araldite, whatever you want to use. So they'll just hopefully fit in the little slot here and stand upright. There we go. So you can just glue them in like so. There's 2 to do, one on that side and one on the other. and it's quite simple to do. Now this is going to be a prototype, so I'm going to glue these in now so they don't fall off, and make it easier so I don't have to hunt around on the floor for them when they do fall off. So recommendation is to fit these springs last, after you have painted the model, and keep them in the bag so you don't lose them. So that's my advice. And then next we'll go on to the the water tank tops. Now you can see on the water tank tops there are various holes, so we'll move our way backwards very slowly and I get rid of that spring. You can see the water filler holes, one here and one there. These do not need drilling out, these will just pop in, and I've got one here, so I'll just slide one in the top. There we go. So I just need a dab of glue on the underside of those, and they'll fit quite nicely and happily in there. Then what we'll do is after that is we'll cut here, and then we'll go on to the cab supports and also the wonderful pipe work which is in the front of Baxter's cab, and also the whistle as well, which is a little bit of an interesting area which you may have to cut and bodge and drill and solder a few bits together, but we'll come back to that after this small interval. Okay, so on with the cab supports. Now these I'll probably add after shaping all the pipe work, but it's good to have them to hand when you need them. And now there are bars stretching from the top of the water tank to the corner of the cab, just up here. If I turn it around you can see the notches or openings just here and here, just to the right of the corner of the cab window or left of the cab window. Now what you'll need is some 0.8mm brass wire. You'll need some pliers, and you'll need basically some shaping skills of trying to shape this metal wire. So I've already started on this section here. Again, you can get this from Eileen's Emporium, of course, which has a good selection of brass wire, etc. So this has been shaped, as you can see. It's about a 45-degree angle from here to up here. It's got a slight bow in it, and then it comes over at the top. So that will fit into this hole here, nearest the edge. You may want to drill it, just to make sure it's 0.8. You'll possibly need to run a file down this hole here, or opening. So if I grab my wire, which I've already pre-shaped, you'll just need to go back and check and recheck and make sure it's how you want it. That fits in there quite nicely, as you can see there. Let the light open up a little bit. So that's how it should be. There's two of them, one here and one on the other side. You can glue these in with some super glue or araldite, but I tend to shape them first and then take them off and then do the copper wire, which is for the pipe work, because it's quite fiddly and you don't want anything in the way. When you do finish shaping, you'll need to cut it off so it's flush with the back of the front of the cab. Well, not the front of the cab, but the back of the cab, you know what I mean. So it's flush with this surface here, so the back of the cab plate. So if I take that off, I'll just need to slightly bend out the bottom one, because that was keeping it slightly above where I need it to be. So I'm just going to cut it there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to shave off or file off what I don't need. Just put that in there like so. So about 1 millimeter over, you can see. So I'll take a little bit more off. I haven't drilled the holes on this one, so That's pretty good. So I've just still got a little bit more to file off, but that's how it should sit on the model. You can chemically blacken them if you wish and then put them on, because they're brass you can chemically blacken them. And I'll need to do the other side, which I have one here. I mean, that'll be chemically blackened and put on slightly later on, maybe at a finishing stage. So what I'll do now is we'll cut here again and we'll go on to the next section, which is basically the pipe work, which is quite fiddly and time consuming, but it's well worth the effort. So you join me back at the next part, which was coming up. It's been about a week or two since I actually ordered some bits for this, because I found out I didn't have any whistles left in my stock box. So we'll get on with it. So this part is mainly to do with the copper parts, so the pipe work and also the whistles. So I've sort of gathered together a few options for you. It's going to be a bit tricky. You do need some skills, some soldering, maybe a piece of wood as well to solder on as well, so you don't burn through your workbench. Soldering irons, some solder, so 145 degree would be great. You can get most of that from Eileen's Emporium. You'll need some copper wire. Now here we have some 0.45 and some 0.6. Now I get this from sort of jewellery specialists, although this one's from the Scientific Wire Company, which sounds a bit weird. So those are the two sizes depending which route you go on to put together the copper pipe work. You'll need some round nose pliers, which I have around here somewhere. There you go, there's some round nose pliers which do help with shaping the wire, and you also need some normal flat pliers, which are also quite good for bending things. So as I say, I started this a little while ago, but I had to stop and wait for some parts to arrive, like the whistles. So before we go much further, we'll talk about the whistles to begin with, which is probably the most simple area to talk about. So we'll start with the middle section, which is basically the whistle and some pipe work. So on this one I've done it quite differently. I've nicked off a Lima sort of brass turned whistle, I think. It's just turned and cleaned up the top end here. So this one's been made totally from scratch with spare bits and pieces. So 0.6 copper wire, and in the bottom I've used an O-gauge handrail knob, a short handrail knob, which has a 0.6 diameter inside to allow the copper wire through. When that's bent round and then through the two holes in the back. Now I've filed off the top to make it flat, and then I've drilled another hole downwards, and again that depends on what whistle you're going to use and size etc of the end of your whistle, so make a decision before you start. So for this one I'm going to use sort of a Midland whistle, I believe it is, S and DJR, or Midland whistle. It's from Markets, as seen here. I bought it from Roxy Mouldings. So this is the slightly more challenging, difficult one. A lot of shaping with the round nose pliers and 0.6mm copper wire. You need to drill the middle section down. I think it's 1.2mm. I've actually drilled it all the way through, but you don't need to drill it all the way through. Then you just need to drill the top. I think it's about 0.5 or 0.6 of a mil on the top downwards to fit the whistle. Then solder it all together with some 145 degree solder. So that's option one. As you can see, it's slightly tall, so it's a bit too big. The other option is I've been looking at is a totally different whistle, a totally different look of whistle, but it's this Southern Railway Uri whistle, again from Markets, although purchased from Roxy Mouldings. So here you go, that's the part number. Now this has a bottom part on it, like a handrail knob, to have a hole through the centre. Now it's mainly used on Hornby M7s or M7s and that type of thing, with a bit of 0.45mm brass wire to go back towards the cab. However, if you turn it round sideways, you can then fit it like this one and use some 0.45mm copper wire and then just thread that round, same kind of style, and drill a smaller hole, which I think is about 0.5 of a mil, maybe something like that, and then glue that in place, and again solder it all together if you like beforehand, because this is nice pliable wire and you can bend it quite easily. So that's what I say for the whistle. So you've got two options, the more difficult one or the slightly easier one. They don't cost too much, the whistles, so up to you. Now we'll go on to the actual more difficult part, which is the actual pipe work. Okay, so you can see here the steam pipes and water pipes and various other bits and pieces. So you can see I haven't put my whistle on there yet, but I'll get round to it at some point. And you can see the right hand side one already made here pipework wise. So you can see one here on the left. This is made up of three sections, an L-shaped one, a U-shaped one, and one with a slight kink in it which goes backwards and turns right slightly and solders onto here. So three sections of copper wire. I just generally do it by photos, like this U-shaped part goes halfway up the cab window or opening, and you can see here I've got the various sections 1, 2 and 3 in position here, which have fallen away slightly, so I've just knocked the back off. Now I've used this as a sort of holder while I'm just tack soldering it in place, and then what I do is put it on some 3mm ply and then solder it all together using a bit more heats and a bit more time, so it's all soldered together properly. Very fiddly. Maybe you can glue it together if you wish, but it won't hold if you handle it or manhandle it or slightly knock it. So I tend to solder all this together, but that's what I do. Again, this is 0.6mm wire on here and here and on the other side as well. Very difficult to do, quite challenging and fiddly, but it's worth the effort if you want to put in the effort to get what you want. So that's my suggestion at the moment, and that's how I build mine. Again, you're using pliers and some round nose pliers for this bit. I'm also using the angle on this cutting board as well, especially for this area here, which is about a 45-degree angle off the bit inside. You may also need to drill holes in the center here, so this one and the one at the back here, just so the copper wire can go in a bit further. I mean, you can trim the wire with some cutters like these, for example, and then just glue them in place. So that's what I would do. You've got about 3 or 4 varying options there depending on what you want to do. So having done that and said that, we'll now move on to the cab area, or the back of the cab where the plate has fallen off, this one just here, and we'll talk you through what to do with that. And that should be the last part, and then you can possibly head on down the road of finishing and painting. So join me back at the next part and we'll go through the next section. So onto the back of the cab. You're probably going to say, well, what about the cab in terms of motors, etc. There'll be a separate part tagged on to the end of this video, because this is probably getting quite long now. And you can see on this one I have the back head fitted on this with all its electronics and interesting bits and pieces. But there'll be two options for motors: the original out the pug, or something new, which will probably cost £15 to £20. Not quite sure yet until I have every single bit in stock. The flywheels are still being made at this present moment in time. But before we do that, I'll talk about the back of the cab. Now, there's a plate at the back of the cab which goes about here, and you can see three here. Some prototypes and some which are production ones. So after asking questions from people and seeing what people preferred, this one has half 3D printed handrails and a metal top piece. And I said, well, these might be quite delicate, and I've already broken this one, so that's a proven point. And they said, well, prefer the whole metal look, so we got rid of that one and we settled on this one. So this one has metal 0.45mm all the way around and down. So you'll need two drill sizes for this. One is 0.45mm for the handrails. You need your pin vise. Be very careful, because you may break the bits that hold the handrail. They're very fragile. You also need a 0.65mm drill bit. You can see on here, not sure you can see, but there's small pins on the bottom to locate into the running plate here. Now, these four holes here need to be drilled, and also these parts need to be cleaned up. This one hasn't quite been cleaned up yet, or filled with filler and then sanded back. So this one needs drilling, and this needs drilling and cleaning up, etc. So on here there are four holes: 1, 2, 3 and 4. On your 3D print there'll be small indentations, and they'll need to be drilled out to 0.65mm. With that done, then you can move on to the drilling of the holes on here. So it is very small, but there are indentations on here and here, and also in the bottom as well. I don't think you'll have to do the bottom ones, just do the top ones, and be very careful and slow about it. Don't rush it, don't put too much force on it, otherwise you'll break these off or split them. If you don't split them, hopefully you don't, you'll end up something like this. This one hasn't been filled or cleaned up yet. This is 0.45mm brass wire. Again, Eileen's Emporium. If you've ordered a pack, you won't need to order more. You'll need to bend it at the top to follow the roof line, which will go on top. There's a back to the cab, so this will just sit up against the back of the cab roof. If I lay this down, you can probably see the size of the wire. So that's about 10, 20, 23-ish millimeters. When it goes up to about 25 in the middle and comes back down again, and then that will just make a U shape. So drill the holes, fill that up a little bit from where the supports have been pulled off. Then once that's all done and glued together, you can then fit it. Don't glue it on until you've lined it out, of course. So that will fit in there like that. Make sure it's sitting the right and the right thing. That's leaning back slightly, so just move it forward. There you go. So then that is in the correct place. Then you can get your cab roof, which has been cleaned up and filled and filed and all that kind of thing, and that will just sit on there like so. and you have a pretty much complete locomotive. So that's what you do on the last part. Quite simple, but please take care. I will not have an abundant supply of back plates for cabs. So that's how I would go about it. So after all that, none of this is glued together, so you can take it apart and then paint it and line it out. Now the lining on this model is a bit odd. It's not red, it's sort of an off-white, sort of pinkish colour. You can line it out in white if you wish, but it just stands out a little bit too much. I might have a word with the transfer chap and see if we can do some transfers for this model, like the buffer beam and some lining sheets. But as I say, that's way down the road for me. As long as I can get the kits made, working, then that's an achievement. And then I'll work on doing the transfers, as the Bluebell is miles away from me and quite a journey as well to get down to Sheffield Park and photograph it. So we'll move on to the kits, the motor kit, which I've been putting together, and that should feature shortly after this section, and hopefully you find it useful.